Renaissance literature. My name is Fawzi Slisli, and today I will be talking to you about the pastoral poem. And we have two poems today by Christopher Marlowe and Sir Walter Raleigh. First of all, let's start with some definitions. The pastoral is defined as pertaining to the shepherd. It's a minor but important mode which by convention is concerned with the lives of shepherds. It is of great antiquity and interpenetrates many works in classical and modern European literature. It is doubtful if pastoral ever had much to do with the daily working life of shepherds. It's not directly connected to the lives of shepherds, though it is not too difficult to find shepherds in Europe, in places like Montenegro, in Albania, in Greece, in Sardinia, for instance. You find shepherds who compose poetry and sing songs and while away the hours playing the flute. For the most part, the pastoral in English literature tends to be an idealization of shepherds' life. Yani they're not shepherds themselves, but they idealize the freedom, the nature, the pastoral lifestyle themselves. And by so being, creates an image of a peaceful and uncorrupted existence, a kind of a clean world, if you want. Marlowe's poem and Ralegh's carefully symmetrical response were printed together in England's Helicon in 1600. So Marlowe wrote the poem and Raleigh responded to the poem, and they were printed together in this book called England's Helicon, which was published in 1600. The attribution of the second to Raleigh is first made by Isaac Walton in the Complete Angler in 1653, where both poems were reprinted. Slightly longer versions appear in Walton's second edition, 1655. John Donne's The Bait, the poem The Bait by John Donne, also quoted by Walton, is inspired by the exchange between Raleigh and Marlowe. Marlowe's poem embodies the classical example of carpe diem. It's a Latin expression, carpe diem, which means seize the day, grab the day, live for the now, be happy for now, carpe diem. So Marlowe's poem embodies the classical example of carpe diem, as can be seen in the shepherd's attitude, while Ralegh's nymph finds in them an argument precisely for not seizing the day. So Raleigh argues against carpe diem. In the late 16th century, many other works amplified the pastoral tradition, such as Marlowe's The Passionate Shepherd to His Love, which evoked a memorable reply from Sir Walter Raleigh. So, what does he say? The passionate shepherd to his love. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that valleys, groves, hills and fields, woods or steepy mountain yields, and we will sit upon the rocks, seeing the shepherds feed their flocks by shallow rivers to whose falls melodious birds sing madrigals, and I will make thee beds of roses and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cup of flowers and a kirtle embroidered all with leaves of myrtle, a gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lambs we pull, fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold, a belt of straw and ivy buds, with coral clasps and amber studs. And if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. The shepherd swains shall dance and sing for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. And then there is the reply to the song, the nymph's reply to the shepherd. If all the world and love were young, and truth in every shepherd's tongue, these pretty pleasures might me move to live with thee and be thy love. Time drives the flocks from field to fold, when rivers rage and rocks grow cold, and Philomel becometh dumb. If all the world and love were young, and truth in every shepherd's tongue, these pretty pleasures might me move to live with thee and be thy love. Time drives the flocks from field to fold, when rivers rage and rocks grow cold, and Philomel becometh dumb. The rest complains of cares to come, the flowers do fade and wanton fields, to wayward winter reconning yields, a honey tongue, a heart of gall, is fancy's spring, but sorrow's fall. Thy gowns, thy shoes, thy beds of roses, thy cup, thy kirtle and thy posies, soon break, soon wither, soon forgotten, in folly ripe, in reason rotten, thy belt of straw and ivy belt, thy coral clasps and amber studs, all these in me no means can move, to come to thee and be thy love. But could youth last and love still breed, had joys no date, no age, no need, then these delights my mind might move, to live with thee and be thy love. First, what type of works are these? The Passionate Shepherd is a pastoral poem. Pastoral poems generally center on the love of a shepherd for a maiden, as in Marlowe's poem, for a woman, on the death of a friend, or on the quiet simplicity of rural life. That's what they talk about. The winter of a pastoral poem may be an educated city dweller, like Marlowe. The writer of the poems might be an educated city dweller, like Marlowe, who extols the virtues of a shepherd girl, or longs for the peace and quiet of the country. Pastoral is derived from the Latin word pastor, meaning shepherd. The setting: Marlowe sets the poem in early spring in a rural locale, presumably in England, where shepherds tend their flocks. The use of the word madrigals in line 8 referring to poems set to music and sung by 2 to 6 voices with a single melody, or interweaving melodies. This suggests that the time is the 16th century, when madrigals were highly popular in England and elsewhere in Europe. However, the poem could be about any shepherd of any age in any country, for such is the universality of its theme. Let's look at the characters. The passionate shepherd, he importunes a woman, right? He bothers a woman to tell her that he loves her, presumably a young and pretty country girl, to become his sweetheart and enjoy with him all the pleasures that nature has to offer. The shepherd's love, the young woman who receives the passionate shepherd's message. And then we have the swains, young country fellows, whom the passionate shepherd promises will dance for his beloved. So these are the 3 characters that we have: the passionate shepherd, his love, and the swains. The theme of the passionate shepherd is the rapture of springtime love in a simple rural setting. Implicit in this theme is the motive of carpe diem, as we said, Latin for seize the day. Carpe diem urges people to enjoy the moment without worrying about the future. The meter is an iambic pentameter, which weighs syllables 4 iambic feet per line, with 8 syllables, 4 iambic feet per line. An iambic foot consists of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. The following example will illustrate. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove. Right? So it's 4 and 4, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed syllable. The rhyme in each stanza: the first line rhymes with the second, the third rhymes with the fourth. The structure of the poem It contains 7 quatrains, meaning 4-line stanzas. There is 7 of those, for a total of 28 lines. Marlowe structures the poem as follows. Stanza number 1. The shepherd asks the young lady to live with me and be my love, noting that they will enjoy all the pleasures of nature. Stanza 2 to 4. The shepherd makes promise that he hopes will persuade the young lady to accept his proposal. Stanza 5 to 7. After making additional promises, the shepherd twice more asks the lady to live with me and be my love. To summarize, the passionate shepherd to his love is a pastoral lyric, a poetic form that is used to create an idealized vision of rural life with the context of personal emotions. Pastoral poems had been in vogue among poets for at least 1700 years when Marlowe wrote this one. So when he was writing, this was a long tradition. The Greek poet Theocritus in the 3rd century BCE was the first pastoralist poet, and he too wrote about shepherds. All pastoral poetry, including Marlowe's, is to some degree influenced by this original practitioner. The poem is written in very regular iambic tetrameter. Each line contains exactly 4 heavy stresses, and the metrical feet are almost always iambic. Similarly, most lines contain 8 syllables, and the few that don't create specific poetic effects, such as line 3 and 4, or have easily elided syllables which may be read as 8. This regular meter, sustained through the 24 lines, remarkably never descends into the sing-song quality so prevalent in tetrameter, primarily because Marlowe salts his line with a variety of devices that complement the meter, withdrawing too much attention to its rigid regularity. Marlowe's use of soft consonants such as W, M, E, F to start lines, with the occasional feminine ending of an unstressed syllable in the 3rd stanza, lent a delightful variety to an essentially regular and completely conventional form. In the 1st stanza, the shepherd invites his love to come with him and pleasures prove in line 2. This immediate reference to pleasure gives a mildly sexual tone to the poem, but it is of the totally innocent, almost naive kind. The shepherd makes no innuendo, but rather gently and directly calls to his love. He implies that the entire geography of the countryside of England, the valleys, the groves, hills and fields, woods or steepy mountains, will prove to contain pleasure of all kinds for the lovers. The next stanza suggests that the lover will take their entertainment not in a theater or at a banquet, but sitting upon rocks by a river. They will watch shepherds, of which the titular speaker is ostensibly one, except here it is implied that he will have ample leisure feeding their flocks or listening to waterfalls and the songs of birds. The enticement of such auditory and visual pleasures, the birds and the water of the river and so on, can be seen as a marked contrast to the hurly-burly, a phrase Marlowe used in his later play Dido, Queen of Carthage, of the London stage plays, which Marlowe would write. So he says he preferred this countryside setting to the busy and noisy city life. These are entirely bucolic, traditional entertainments. The idea of Marlowe, the young man about town who chose to live in London, actually enjoying these rustic countryside places and pleasures exclusively and leaving the city behind, is laughable, because of course he's not going to do that. He will stay and live in London. Again, these invitations are not to be taken literally. Marlowe may well have admired pastoral verse and the ideals of it, such as Ovid's ideal of aggressive, adulterous, heterosexual love, were not necessarily those he would espouse for himself. The 3rd, 4th and 5th stanza are a kind of list of the delights, mostly sartorial, that the shepherd will make for his lady love. Here it becomes clearer that the shepherd is really none of the same. Indeed, he is more like a feudal landowner who employs shepherds. So this is not a shepherd, this is more somebody who is a feudal lord who has lots of land, and he employs shepherds who work for him. The list of the things that he will make for his lady: beds of roses, a phrase incidentally first coined by Marlowe, which has survived to this day in common speech, though in the negative. No bed of roses, meaning not a pleasant situation. 1,000 fragrant posies, cup of flowers, kirtle embroidered with leaf of myrtle, gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lamps we pull. So gown made of the finest wool, which from our pretty lamps we pull. Fair-lined slippers, buckles of the purest gold, belts of straw and ivy buds, coral clasps and amber studs. All these things that he promises to make for her reveal a great deal about the situation of the shepherd and what he can offer his love. While certainly many of the adornment, many of these beautiful things Marlowe lists would be within the power of a real shepherd to procure or make, these are things that a shepherd can make, like slippers, the belt, the bed of roses, the cup of flowers and the many posies, possibly even the kirtle embroidered with myrtle and the lamb's wool gown. But the gold buckles, the coral clasp and the amber studs would not be easily available to the small holder or tenant shepherd who actually did the work of shepherding, right? These items are very expensive, and an average shepherd will not be able to produce them or give them to a lady. This increasingly fanciful list of gifts could only come from a member of the gentry, a bourgeois, feudal, or a merchant in the town. The poem ends with an if statement and contains a slightly somber note. There is no guarantee that the lady will find these country enticement enough to follow the shepherd, and since the construction of them is preposterous and fantastical to begin with, the reader is left with the very real possibility that shepherd will be disappointed. The passionate shepherd to his love was composed sometimes in Marlowe's early years. He was young, between the ages of 16 and 23. Around the same time, he translated Ovid's Amores, the Latin poet Ovid. This is to say, Marlowe wrote this poem before he went to London to become a playwright. Thornton suggests that Marlowe's poetic and dramatic career follows an Ovidian career model, with his amatory poems belonging to his youth, followed later by epic poems such as Hero and Lander and Lucan's first book. So in his early youth he writes Ovidian type poems, he writes pastoral poems, and then later on when he grows up he writes epics. The energy and fanciful nature of youth is evident in Passionate Shepherd, which has been called an extended invitation to rustic retirement. It is headlong in its rush of sentiment, though upon examination it reveals itself to be a particularly well-balanced piece of poetry. This poem is justly famous, though it may not be immediately identifiable as Marlowe's. The meter, though seemingly regular, gives a great deal of meaning and music to the poem. In line 10, the iambic pattern, so far unbroken, reverses to trochaic, stressed and unstressed. The line is innocuous and 1,000 fragment posies. There is no special meaning to this line that requires a complete reversal of the meter, but it is completely complementary line to the one above it. The kind of temporary shift in meter makes the poem lighter to read, and while preserving regularity, lessens any sing-song quality. A comparison between the two poems for the nymph's reply to the shepherd really argues that it is not society that taints sexual love. We are already tainted before we enter society. Rayleigh combines carpe diem with temptus fugit in an unusual way. normally we should seize the day because time fly. Rayleigh argues that because times fly, we should not seize the day. There will be consequences to their roll in the grass. Time does not stand still. Winter inevitably follows the spring. Therefore, we cannot act on impulses until we have examined the consequences. These two poems can teach a lesson even in the present day. The idealistic world that the shepherd dreamt of seemed like a wonderful thing, but there was nothing substantial to back it up. There are many instances of this in life, not just in love. The young girl had the presence of mind to realize that the things he was offering her, though tempting, were not what she wished for in life. She knew that because time is short and life does not last forever, that one must think about the impact decisions made today will have tomorrow or in the future. And this brings me to the end of this lecture. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in future classes and future courses. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa ta'ala wa barakatuh.